step in to do my clearance with the party, 3 days to campaign, 2 days to prepare for the election, and governor-elect. So there's no way I could have done it if it was not that I was carrying a certain name that was already well known. We had a uniform we were campaigning with,
right,
for my brother's governor, and I put on the same uniform and did my poster.
Okay.
Because what everybody was wearing.
Okay,
let
me
just said Dr. Nwodo, I didn't even know which one.
So it was a smooth ride.
Yes, it was.
Okay, let me ask you to hold your thoughts. We'll come back to you in a minute. You're watching The Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former governor of Enugu State and former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyegolu. Now, when the Nigerian Civil War ended in January 1970, the Nigerian leader Yakubu Gowon declared there was no victor and no vanquished, a phrase that became the motto of reunification between the breakaway southeast region and the rest of Nigeria. But for many people in the southeast, the reunion has been, to say the least, strained and edgy, perhaps even troubled, certainly suspicious. The Igbos, who dominate the southeast zone, say there's little development there, and it's a common perception, not just in the southeast but across Nigeria, that Igbo people are marginalized in a Nigeria that many believe only serves the interests of the two other main ethnic groups, the Hausa Fulani and to a lesser extent the Yoruba. Although every available statistic, both official and unofficial, shows that poverty rates are far higher in the north than in the southeast, how genuine are those complaints of marginalization? Well, my guest today is Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo, who's the former governor of Enugu State and former chairman of the PDP. He is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you very much.
And it sounds like you've been relatively low-key recently as far as Nigerian politics is concerned, but this whole thing of Igbo presidency has brought you back into the fray, as it were.
Well, let me say that after my stewardship as national chairman, I just decided to take a rest, if you like, sabbatical holiday. But then on my 70th birthday, you know, most newspapers have the
profile. Which was last month, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Just 28th of July. Many newspapers have a profile page, and many pressmen requested for interview for this their profile page. And then we start with my childhood, and of course they end up with current affairs and what's going on. And I just had to say my mind when I was asked that question about Igbo presidency. And Charlie, I believe that your introduction is right when you talk about marginalization of the Igbos after the Civil War. If we even go back before this, to what led to the Civil War, okay? Now, there was a coup, a military coup, which was advertised over and above every other thing to have been led by the Igbos, naming Ifajuna and Nzogu as primary actors. But the truth was that they were not just Igbos that did the coup. They were also Yorubas, and they were also northern officers, okay, who were serving under some of these officers, and who went along with what they were doing, okay? Now, unfortunately, the people they earmarked to eliminate out of the four premiers at that time, it was only the premier of the north, Samadu Bello, and the premier of the west, Akintola, that were killed, and then the prime minister. But what followed subsequently, I think, went beyond retaliation for those people that were killed. And I tell you why. The next thing that followed was that the Igbo head of state was killed in a very humiliating manner. And before you say Jack Robinson, over 300 officers of the Nigerian Army of Igbo extraction were also killed. And if that was not enough to retaliate for the killing of the Prime Minister and the Minister in the North, a pogrom was unleashed in which thousands of people were killed. And the Igbos were forced to run back to the east. And when their security could not longer be guaranteed, and they were being still killed, and they negotiated a confederation, the terms of the negotiation were aborted. And then a civil war was unleashed on them, in which over 3 million people died. So if the Igbos are paying for the Northerners or Akintola or Okotiebo who were killed, who are not Igbos.
You believe they paid their debt?
The debt has been...
Right, okay. I'll tell you what, let me bring this to today, because really what the Igbos want, and I've spoken to a lot of Igbo people, is to be able to build their factories, their roads, their cities, and not have to depend on somebody in the capital, Abuja. Essentially, they want everyone else in Nigeria, they want what everyone else in Nigeria is demanding, which is development. What makes the Igbo case and Igbo yearnings different from the rest of Nigeria?
What makes it different is that I believe that the Igbos are bringing to the table Nigeria's unity. The day an Igbo man sits as president of Nigeria, that is the end of the Civil War. That is the end of agitation for Biafra. That is the end of agitation for South-South autonomous entity. That's the end of agitation of Oduduwa state. That's the end of agitation of marginalization and the wanton killing in the Middle Belt. Because it is impossible for an Igbo man to preside over marginalization of anybody in anywhere in Nigeria. But what it means is that he is asking those people to once more unleash genocide on Igbos living in their midst.
Yeah, but what you're saying, I mean, some people would argue that it just seems to paint this very rosy, very idealistic picture of what an Igbo person would do as president. Because, I mean, you've got Igbo politicians today. You know, you've got a political class that is full of Igbos. And there is no evidence that they're doing anything better than all the other bad lot who make up Nigerian politics. I mean, there is no evidence of that.
There is evidence.
What's the evidence?
The evidence is that an Igbo man called Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe.
No, that's in the past.
No,
I'm talking about today.
I'm building
right,
up.
Okay.
Was at the forefront for the independence of not only Nigeria, but African countries. And after the fight, he was ready to have anybody as Prime Minister of Nigeria as long as we got independence. That is awesome. The same thing, Dr. Emma Okpara, as Premier of Eastern Nigeria, grew the fastest growing economy anywhere in the world.
Yeah, but my problem, Dr.
Yes.
Nwodo, is that you're hearkening back to the past.
I
know there's a need to look to the past in order to understand the present and the future, but the problem is those people are no longer here.
Yes.
They were individuals, and to be fair, I mean, there were first-class politicians, Awolowo from the West and even the North as well. I mean, those people are not here anymore. What people are looking at is the people who are charged with the politics of this country today. I mean, where can you show a manifestation of an Igbo leader in contemporary times who has made a dramatic, transformative difference in this country? Show me a state, for example, one of the Igbo states. I mean, what are they doing with their own states, their own backyards? Never mind the national sort of you know, taking over the presidency of this country. I'm not talking about the morality of it. I'm talking about because you could make a case about the moral side of things, but in terms of them making a significant difference, I don't see that. I mean, I just see them as all the other politicians in Nigeria.
Let me again, if you will allow me, to build up to
the problem is that I'm going to have to ask you to hold it, and I don't mean to interrupt you, because unfortunately we have to take a break in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
So I've made the point, but I promise that when we come back, you can take considerable amount of time to make your point.
Thank you so
So
much.
please stay with us.
Thank you.
You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former governor of Enugu State and former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, in just over 30 years of democracy, Nigeria hasn't had an Igbo president, and the calls for a return to the breakaway Republic of Biafra, unless this happens, have become louder and more resonant. But where once such sentiments were expressed by die-hard activists and radical youths, now it seems to have gone more mainstream, with some members of the Igbo political elite warning that if the Southeast doesn't get the presidency in 2023, when Nigeria is due for its next general election, then Igbo politicians will join the activists and radicals in demanding a Biafran republic. Prominent among those voices is the former chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Okwesilieze Nwodo, who's also a former governor of Enugu State. And Dr. Nwodo is still with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed. And apologies, we had to take a break earlier, but you were making the case for an Igbo presidency in 2023 in preference to any other region, and why this would help Nigeria move forward.
Yeah, I wanted, because your question tended to focus on what has an Igbo leader done that is awesome, that cuts them out as some people that can deliver dividends.
I mean, a contemporary one, not a historical one. Right.
And I want to say that let's just, even if we take the immediate last set of governors, I think that what Governor Peter Obi did in Anambra State is awesome. Whether it's infrastructural development, whether it was I know Anambra was down to about the 13th state in, for example, West African school certificates. But when it was there for 3 consecutive years, they produced the best result in Nigeria. So there's so many awesome things that Peter did. In this current team now, if you go to Abakaliki, you can't recognize Abakaliki. The amount of infrastructural development that has gone there is unimaginable. So I believe that we have contemporary leaders who can do awesome things for Nigeria if given the opportunity.
Yeah, well, I have to say that I haven't been to Abakaliki, but I certainly know Peter Obi, and I know of his antecedents, and I know the work that he's done, and he has been recognized both in Nigeria and internationally as making a significant difference. But you know, that's neither here nor there, is it? In practical terms, though, how would this Igbo presidency that you're advocating be actualized? What would it entail? I mean, the 2 big parties, the APC and the PDP, both selecting and anointing an Igbo candidate? Is that what you want?
Exactly. And their presidents. It won't be happening for the first time in Nigeria. Let's take, for example, after the annulment of June 12th election, the country felt really that Abiola was short-circuited. And his people carried on Nedeku for a long time, asking for justice. Maybe it is under this administration now that justice has come to him. Okay, but even to ameliorate it before now, the 2 most important political parties chose Governor Obasanjo and Olufalaye to run for the election. Let's go to the West and appease them for this. The last election, PDP chose a Hausa Fulani. The APC chose a Hausa Fulani. And win or lose, Hausa Fulani is president today. So I don't see that there is so much depth of leadership and capacity in the Southeast that if the presidency is zoned by the major political parties to the Southeast, they will not find materials that can govern Nigeria.
Mm. And you are, of course, a politician of note with your ear to the ground, as it were. What are you hearing about this among politicians from other regions of Nigeria? Because you obviously have to build a multi-ethnic, multi-regional coalition to achieve this goal.
I believe that most politicians that have commented on this matter, I must say that they have been very fair. Tanko Yasakai made awesome statements that it is the turn of the Southeast. The same thing with what we have just heard from distinguished Senator Ndume. The same thing with all the major cultural associations in Nigeria today. The Niger Delta people have said, yes, the right people to go is Southeast. The Afanifere has said so. The Middle Belt has said so. And going around the country, you get the pulse that men of conscience and people who really love Nigeria and who want everything that is wrong now, that has a high percentage of being set aright, will be to go to the Southeast and choose the next president.
And in the event that your calls for an Igbo president in 2023 are not heeded by the main political parties, what happens next?
Well, they're setting a dangerous precedent. Because as we are today, the unity of Nigeria has not been threatened to this extent, even with the outbreak of the Civil War. We have never had various major groupings in Nigeria sounding discontent with the Federation. And if the most marginalized is not consoled, then all the other groups will say, what is the point? You can't find justice in this country. And then that's when you see the agitation of those who want now to have a restructured Nigeria. Will move to the next step of disintegration of Nigeria.
Right, because you yourself have talked about the fact that, and there was a measure of threat there, that you talked about that if this presidency does not go to the Southeast, that Southeastern politicians, mainstream politicians such as yourself, will now come out in support of Biafra. Is that a fact?
It's not a threat. I'm sorry if anybody saw it as a threat, but I was sounding a warning note.
Right. Okay.
That people have an alternative when they are rejected.
In other words, that it's likely to lead more people in that direction.
In that direction.
Right. But there are some who will consider your suggestion of either, because that's the way it was written up. Yes. I mean, I don't know if that's how you said it, but that's certainly the way that it came out. Either Igbo presidency in 2023 or Biafra. Some people are going to consider that to be quite incendiary and perhaps even irresponsible. I mean, what would you say to them?
No, it's the way that somebody looks at it. Some people have said, I am threatening that Biafra will go back to war. No.
Well, that's why I wanted to come from you. How did you say it?
Yes, nobody's going to war. What I mean is that if we are rejected in Nigeria, it doesn't mean that we have no alternative.
Or if you're perceived to be rejected.
Yes, I mean, you cannot beat a child and ask him not to cry.
Right.
Okay? Now, and therefore, if we have done everything in the past 50 years, endured every marginalization and everything, and after 50 years, we still have to wait for another 50 years before we become Nigerians. And before we can become president of Nigeria. I don't think it's fair.
Well, let me take you up on that point of marginalization.
Yeah.
I mean, can you see the point that many Nigerians have about this issue of Igbo marginalization? Because many of them can't understand the logic, because the Igbo community, arguably more than any other in Nigeria, are doing business in every part of this country and are doing better than most. I mean, I've seen statistics that show that 60% of businesses in Abuja are owned by Igbos. Up to 40% of businesses in Lagos are owned by Igbos. I mean, what then is the basis of that insistence on marginalization when the real issue for most people in this country is economic?
Okay. Economically, the Igbos have done very well, and they'll continue to do well. I remember when Air Commodore Umerua was governor in Enugu, one of his classmates way back before the Nigeria Civil War came to visit with him. And he asked him to jump into the car that he was going for an official visit to Onitsha. When they got to Onitsha, he asked him, all these skyscrapers, is this where the whole government money is being sunk? And he told him, not one of them is built by the government. The government hasn't built anything here, not even a bungalow. It is the enterprise of people who came home, no matter how much they had in the bank, were given 20 pounds. And within such a short time, this is what they've done with it. This is what they're doing in Abuja, like you said. This is what they're doing in Lagos. This has nothing to do with government incentive. When we talk about marginalization, we mean being marginalized by the Nigerian government.
In other words, a political or politically motivated marginalization.
Exactly, and I can give you instances.
Right.
After the Civil War, it was an unwritten accord in the federal government that these rebels cannot be Minister for Defense, cannot be Minister for Finance, cannot be Minister for Internal Affairs, cannot be Chief of Army Staff, Chief of anything. And yet, we have no victor, no vanquished.
Yeah, but that changed, though, didn't it? I mean, there was an Igbo man who was Minister of Defense. There have been Igbos who have been heads of the service.
This was when Jonathan came to office. And I'm saying that, as we're saying this, look at this eastern region. There's not one federal industry that has been cited in the southeast since after the war. The roads in the southeast are the worst in the federation. You cannot travel by road from Enugu to Onitsha. Well, neither can you travel from Enugu to Umuahia, Owerri, or Port Harcourt.
Yeah, but the current government would probably dispute that, because they say, although I haven't been to those places, so I don't have any evidence, but they certainly say that they're doing massive work across the southeast. They're building, they're rehabilitating roads and infrastructure and that sort of thing. I mean, I've also gone to the southwest, and there are a lot of roads that are very bad there.
The roads that they're building in the southeast, for the past 5 years, we can still not travel from Enugu to Onitsha.
I agree with you. I mean, I agree that some of those roads are terrible.
These roads...
But is it particular to the southeast?
It is worse than anywhere else.
Right.
It's worse than anywhere else. Then, when you come even in present day, let's say that under Jonathan and Obasanjo, who were Southerners, in some of these positions that were excluded from came to us. But what about today? There is no institution of government that bears arms that is headed by an Igbo. Not one.
Yeah, but there was, I mean, there was a